What's up, everybody? It is Friday, and we have a great episode of GoJo and Golic headed your way today. We will talk Thursday night football. The 49ers, bit of a return to form, huh? Highest scoring offense of the year so far for them. Plus, rivalries. Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma. We will talk about that. Jaden Daniels versus Lamar. We will talk about that. Plus, we are jam-packed with guests today. It's going to be an amazing show. GoJo and Golic coming your way.
Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here. We are presented by Campbell's Chunky, soup that eats like a meal. And we, as Jesse mentioned, got a jam-packed show that's going to eat like a meal today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. And check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Fun one, as she mentioned, guest-wise, we are slammed. Terron Armstead, Miami Dolphins offensive tackle, going to join us here in the first hour. Jordan Brenner from the Underdogs going to join us and look at some good bets going into the weekend. And then Kenny Albert, Fox play-by-play announcer, going to join us at the end of the show to take a look at the weekend that is. I am in Albuquerque, New Mexico, getting ready to call Air Force at New Mexico this weekend, which should be interesting. And Dad, Jesse, I have stumbled upon my second balloon festival of the year. So in my travels around the Mountain West footprint, I have apparently found out that hot air balloons are it around here, because week one, when I was on the road in Reno calling the game in Nevada, I encountered a hot air balloon festival that jammed up hotels. And out here, this hotel I'm at is covered in like paraphernalia and signs and things, all for people here for the hot air balloon festival. I can't wait to see them in action today.
I think you're secretly a lunar, and you're just pretending that you're there to cover
there
football.
You go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're acting like you're covering football, but you're a lunar. And I listen, the thing that impressed me the most is it's obviously very, very early there, is you already had a breakfast burrito they had laid out in the lobby. I mean, holy smokes, that's unbelievable. I wonder if that's associated because of the balloon festival and all the people in town. I wonder if they normally do that, because that seems odd.
It does seem like they are quite literally catering to the Lunars, which I'm fine with as the beneficiary of that. And if I've got to like masquerade as a Lunar to get some of the perks that go along with this, then buddy, I'm going to grab that net and catch that beautiful balloon.
Masquerade as a lunar. Okay, GoJo.
Yeah, that's how you, you figured him out, Jesse. Yep. I get you.
Nice try.
Finally, I can be who I really am here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And thank God there's breakfast burritos here, because last night was wild. Like, it just one of those. We're running into more of those now. Like, now that we're into the playoffs, and we have been for the WNBA and Major League Baseball, it just feels like every morning we walk in here and feel like we were taking sports through a fire hose last night. As in Major League Baseball, the Guardians forced Game 5 in that series against the Detroit Tigers. The Yankees go and beat up on the Royals, and they get a 3-1 win. They move on now to the championship series on their side there. Garrett Cole absolutely mowing folks down, looking exactly like the ace that they played for. And, oh, by the way, Game 1 of the WNBA Finals kicked off, and we got an 18-point comeback by the Minnesota Lynx to go out here and shock the world and this New York Liberty team that we all thought was just going to roll. It was an insane night of sports.
Yeah, and incredible notes on each of those games. For the Yankees, for Cleveland, they even up that series at 2 apiece, go back to Cleveland for the deciding game. They have to face, unfortunately, Tarek Skubal, who's gonna win the AL Cy Young. It'd be pitching for them. Cleveland, though, amazingly enough, they ended a streak of 11 losses in the postseason elimination games that dates back to the World Series Game 6 in '97. They lost 11 straight postseason games, elimination games, which was one last night. They would have been eliminated, and they were able to get the win. So pretty impressive for them.
Got to say, Patrick Mahomes, bad luck charm at this point. Ever since he got done, started talking about the Royals in public, was seen at the game. They've gone out here and just spit the bit on their side for that series, losing to the Yankees. So tough way to go out if you are Patrick Mahomes going into the bye.
Yeah. I mean, Garrett Cole was a monster. 7 innings, 6 hits. He gave up 1 earned run, 4 strikeouts. Clay Holmes with a perfect eighth, Luke Weaver with a perfect ninth. The Yankees relievers are on 15 2/3 scoreless innings. So the relievers are smoking pretty well for the Yanks as they now await the winner of Detroit and Cleveland on Saturday. So that's Saturday. Friday is a deciding game. San Diego, the Padres are at the Dodgers. So by Saturday night, we'll have our championship series all set in the National League, who will face the Mets, and the American League, who will face the Yankees.
God, so we'll have all of that set by the time that we are finishing what is shaping up to be one of the most insane slates of college football we've had all year, one of those weekends that everyone's circled around the calendar. So we'll take a look ahead at that. We will get you ready for everything, Dad. That'll be all boiling to the same point in the pot by the end of that Saturday night.
Yeah, and the most exciting part of the night was the Minnesota Lynx and New York Liberty in Game 1 of the WNBA Finals. I mean, basically not handing it, because Minnesota's obviously a tough team, but the way the Liberty have been playing, they took out the Aces to make it to the finals, and the Lynx down 18 in the first half in this game, and then they're down 15 with 5 minutes to go. First time in WNBA history a team down 15 or more with 5 minutes to go came back and won the game. Courtney Williams was unbelievable. She fires up a three at the end of regulation, misses it. They get the rebound. She gets another chance at a three, and she hits it and gets fouled. And she makes the free throw, and the Lynx go up one. And there's basically a second to go, and the Liberty are taking the ball out underneath the basket. And Brianna Stewart makes her way right under the basket. So basically the ball's almost handed to her. She goes up and she's fouled. So she's shooting two with 0.8 seconds left to win the game. She makes the first to tie it and misses the second. And it goes to overtime where who was it? It was Nafisa Collier who hit the basically the game winner with 8 seconds to go. So they're up two. And it's Brianna Stewart again who has the driving layup. I mean, for a layup now, it was contested a bit. It was kind of a reverse layup, but she misses it as time expires. They got the rebound and put it in, but it was after time expired. So Brianna Stewart ends up missing a free throw that would have won him the game in regulation, and missing a reverse layup that would have tied it and sent it to the second, or probably sent it to the second overtime. So that was what a win by the Lynx. What a game by Courtney Williams. I mean, just draining threes.
Courtney Williams, 23 points. Nafisa Collier, who you mentioned, 21 points. Notre Dame's very own Kayla McBride pouring in 22. So all the stars out for the Lynx in a comeback effort. For the ages, Dad, you mentioned the first time that there had been an 18-point comeback in the WNBA Finals. It was tied for the largest comeback in Finals history. WNBA teams were 0-183 across postseason play when trailing by 15 or more points in the final 5 minutes of regulation. It was, if you were into those charts on the side of the ESPN websites, according to ESPN Analytics, the Liberty had a projected 99.2% win probability. So you got to watch that little graph plummet off the cliff in favor of the Lynx, who take game one and now officially put everyone on notice. If you thought for some reason that New York was just going to roll, now that they beat the Aces and slayed their demons, not so fast, my friend, to quote the great Lee Corso. So plenty of action there. And then, oh, by the way, Dad, we had a football game last night as well. Yeah. We had a division football game with two teams coming off losses in the 49ers and the Seahawks. The 49ers go out here and get a pretty emphatic win, Dad, and did it on the back of a run game that still didn't have Christian McCaffrey, and actually got even more beat up as last night went on. Jordan Mason, who had been the star of the season so far for this team, gets banged up in this game. And so they're down on fourth and fifth string running backs in this game. And it really did not matter for them up front at the beginning of this one. What impressed you most, Dad, about the 49ers' effort in this win on Thursday night?
Oh, it was definitely what you just said. I mean, being able to go down the roster of running backs. Jordan Mason had been the third leading rusher in the league, filling in for Christian McCaffrey. He'd been a great find, not catching the ball in the backfield like CMC, but he goes down with a shoulder injury. Now, he later came back. Isaac Arendo ends up getting 10 carries for 99 yards. He has the dagger 76-yard run when Seattle pulled it to within one score with about 1:30 to go. San Fran got the ball, and Garendo just hauled off a 76-yard run, to which San Francisco scored again to make it the final of 36-24. But so the way they controlled the ball, running the ball, I mean, Geno Smith had to throw the ball 52 times. Seattle still doesn't have a running game, but they were down 16-3 in the first half. They were down 23-3 with 10 minutes left in the third. But then, I mean, kind of what San Francisco had been doing, giving up leads. They didn't give up the lead, but Seattle got back into this game with 2 scores, 23-17 into the fourth. And then they're driving for what could have been the go-ahead touchdown. And Geno Smith throws a pick to Renardo Green. And basically San Fran goes down to score, goes up 29-17. Seattle did come back with another score, so they kept making it close, but San Francisco held them back. Brock Purdy threw the ball extremely well. Where the running game wasn't working for Seattle, the passing game, again, Geno, when you're throwing 50 sometimes, normally you're not going to win the game. But his main targets, they're a wide receiver heavy team, obviously, with DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba and Lockett, Tyler Lockett. Those 3 were targeted 28 times and had just 12 catches. DK led the way with 11 targets and just 3 receptions. So Geno Smith and DK Metcalf normally hook up much better than this, not on the same page. So the 3 wide receivers, a lot of targets, not a ton of receptions compared to the targets, and no running game to really back it up.
Yeah, well, and Dad, I think that's sort of the problem underlying for the Seahawks team right now is we've talked about the lack of run game, and you had Mike McDonald coming out in the press conference with the run the damn ball hat on and using that and talking to the media about this is what our response and our strategy is going to be. He wanted to do that, and at some point you saw DK Metcalf literally go rip the head off someone on the sideline and scream at his offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, on the headset about throwing them the damn ball, and once they started doing that, we talked about this yesterday going into the game, Dad. When you're a team like Seattle that's a bit limited up front right now in your offensive line, you can go about that a couple of different ways. One, you can over-index on the run game, use multiple tight end sets, do a lot of the stuff that we see a team like the Kansas City Chiefs do to kind of protect their tackles and try and do it that way. Or you can do what the Cincinnati Bengals under Joe Burrow did, especially when he first got there, and what Seattle had a lot more success with in the second half is, hey, have the quarterback get the ball out of his hands really quick, spread and shred this thing, go 4 and 5 wide, and maximize the more talented room you've got on the team. And once they did that in the second half, Dad, things seem to go a lot better. Now, you have the sense of urgency that comes with the desperation of being down. You're naturally going to be a little bit more aggressive when you're in the hole like that. Yeah. So there's some things that aren't necessarily conducive to regular game flow, but you can see, especially DK Metcalf is kind of the proxy for this, a frustration amongst the Seattle players with figuring out an identity on offense based on the pieces they have. And I think in the case of the offensive line, the pieces they don't, because man, oh man, Stone Forsythe, a player I liked a lot coming out of Florida, who's now the 3rd tackle playing on the right side this year because of injury, did not have a great time with Nick Bosa, who was in Geno Smith's lap basically the entirety of the night, even though Geno Smith did a great job of mitigating any of the sack damage in that. He was still under duress more often than not. And so however you slice it, because Seattle's compromised up front, ultimately everything's going to be hard this year.
Yeah, there was just 1 sack in the game, I think, by San Francisco, but that doesn't that you make it seem it sounds like, oh, they protected well. No, there was a ton of pressures in Geno Smith's face. And but again, San Francisco had a big lead, and they had to be going deja vu. Here we go again, giving up the big lead as Laviska Shenault, when they're down, 23-3 in the third quarter. Shenault has a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and then Seattle scored again. So they put up 14 to make it a 1-score game. Seattle or San Francisco just has a hard time just shutting the door on these teams. Now, they were able to do it at the end of this game in a game San Francisco never trailed. And now they're 3-2. Seattle's 3-2. That would have been a bad loss for San Francisco. They would have been not only 2-4, but 0-3 in the division. But now they get their first win of the division. They beat Seattle. They have the edge over Seattle with the even record. Again, it's early in the season. But you saw a little more of how San Francisco certainly wants to play. Still be able to run. We keep talking about passing the ball, yards after the catch, but man, it doesn't matter who the running back is. They are going to pound the rock.
Well, this is the old version of San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan that everyone talked about. Gained a ton of their yards, I think over 300 yards out of 21 personnel. So two backs, Kyle Juszczyk on the field with whoever's running the ball, and one tight end just going and pounding the rock. And we said going into this one too, Seattle, they were so beat up front. So many of the guys they were missing on defense, Byron Murphy, some of the linebacker group in the middle was going to make it conducive for San Francisco to do exactly what they did, which is just roll the rock no matter who was in that backfield. But Dad, we've seen Kyle Shanahan for years before Christian McCaffrey got there, load up the backfield with undrafted free agent or late round pick running backs and make them successful, provided they've got, speed, some differentiating factor, the way that even the guys they were bringing in as the fourth and fifth stringers did last night. So San Francisco can do this. Dad, for Brock Purdy, what was your thought and what's your read been on him so far this year? Last night, I believe Brock Purdy held the ball longer than he ever had during the NFL season so far in terms of time to throw. He was buying time, trying to make things happen downfield, really successful against zone coverage. What did you think of his performance?
I thought it was an excellent performance. 18 to 28, 255, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He now in his career has 8 games of 3 touchdowns and no interceptions since he came into the league. That's the most. Josh Allen and Jared Goff have 6 each. So Brock Purdy is too clear of second place guys in 3 touchdown, no interception games. He's efficient with the ball. As you said, buying time, rolling out, throwing on the run. He's a quarterback who's going to get paid big time, but he runs this offense extremely well. It's extremely efficient. It helps that they have a excellent running game. That definitely helps. But I thought Brock was fine last night. I thought he did a great job.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't say that as any sort of like attack or indictment on Brock Purdy. It's been amazing watching the way that he's operated this year and how much more it seems like already. He was a guy who, as we talked about the differences between him and Jimmy Garoppolo and the quarterbacks that had come before him in Kyle's offense, the mobility and the playmaking factor was always, I think, a little bit higher than people gave him credit for. And I think this year in the start of the season, and I'll include myself in that, by the way, I think this year at the start of the season, you've already seen his ability to buy time and not take off and run. He's not that level of mobile, but how creative he is in buying time in and around the pocket to still make plays down the field has been crucial in doing the thing, Dad, I think, especially if you're San Francisco and you've got eyes in the postseason, doing the thing that seemed to bother him the most when they got to the playoffs last year, and especially in that game you called where it was the Packers and them on the road at the 49ers, was pressure up the middle, really tanked the 49ers passing offense last postseason because Brock Purdy is a smaller guy. And so him going and now being able to add this to his resume, being able to mitigate some of that pressure the way he has, I think is a huge boost for this 49ers team, provided they get healthier late in the season, to have that in their cap on the offense.
And what a matchup they have next week against Kansas City, who has a bye this week. You talk about a quarterback that create, then now there's 2. There's Purdy and there's Pat Mahomes. So a big test for a Super Bowl rematch, the 49ers and the Chiefs next week. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, going to be a big time matchup there that everyone's looking forward to. We got plenty of other matchups to look at this weekend. So coming up next, we will take a look at the upcoming NFL slate and a big decision that finally came down for the New York Jets and the response from their star quarterback next year on GoJo Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. The Jets are continuing to jet. It has been a hell of a week in New York, you guys. Interim head coach Jeff Ulbrich made a surprising revelation about play calling duties. Take a listen to this.
Regarding the staff, after a lot of time to think about it, and did not make this decision easily by any means, I'm going to make Todd Downing the play caller for the New York Jets going forward. And this is more a byproduct of a different take on things. I'm not saying it's a better or worse take on things by any means, but just a different take on things, a fresh approach. So ultimately, Todd will have the full say on the game plan and ultimately the plays that are called within the game.
Okay, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old, okay? Because apparently Robert Saleh was going to do this anyway. So what the heck is going on?
Yeah, Woody Johnson just really must have not liked Robert Saleh, because at this point now, to your point, Jesse, you've got Ulbrich doing exactly what we expected and heard Rob Saleh was reportedly getting ready to do in shuffling the deck on offense a little bit. And so now on the other side, you have the change in play caller that I think Jets fans really wanted out of any sort of coaching move that was going to happen. And you have Jeff Ulbrich, who's still going to call the plays on defense, he said, but now also has to shoulder the load of the head coaching duties. So you've made him a little bit worse at his job on defense. You've made the change that people saw it on offense, and now you sit here with Robert Saleh getting to watch this on the couch like the rest of us, Dad.
Jesse, I wish I could explain it to you like a 5-year-old, but I don't understand it. It just, as Mike said, it must have been that Woody Johnson just didn't like Robert Saleh, didn't like what was going on, maybe in the locker room, didn't like the locker room communication or the locker room kind of vibe. Because Robert Saleh was going to do this. Robert Saleh was going to demote Nathaniel Hackett and promote Todd Downing to do exactly this. So now you've really shuffled the deck, as Mike said. It's just he gave the analogy yesterday of shifting an O lineman where you're weak in two spots of when you shift an O line. That Ulbrich said he's going to try and infuse his personality in the offense, but he has to take over head coaching duties. Now, most of his work is still going to be on defense with the game plan and calling of the plays. He won't be as involved in the offense, but he's an interim head coach. That he's head of the team now, so he's going to have an eye on the offense. And for Todd Downing, I get what Ulbrich said. He said, who knows if it's going to be better or worse, but it's just going to be a fresh set of eyes. And what's that?
That was them trying to be nice to Nathaniel Hackett, either because of Aaron Rodgers or because they like Nathaniel Hackett. Like him saying it's not better or worse is just kind of being, a softening of the blow for a move that's no doubt an ego shot for Nathaniel Hackett, who's had plenty of those over the last couple of years. He's getting changed because they think Todd Downing can do a better job.
Obviously you make the change because you think he's going to do a better job. It's semantics here. I do think it is a fresh set of eyes calling plays and a fresh voice in Aaron Rodgers' ear, because again, the system is not going to change. You still have the same players and the same system, but what you're going to get is a different way of calling plays. You're going to get a different tone.
I get that, Dad, but I do wonder at some point with how bad the offense has been, and we've heard Aaron Rodgers during this whole saga saying flatly, if I play better and if we play better on offense, none of this stuff is happening right now. So at some point you have to wonder, because we've seen in the past when it was him and Matt LaFleur compromising on the nature of the offense a little bit, if Aaron's got to swallow a little bit of humble pie here and say, hey, the way that I've wanted to do things with me and Nathaniel Hackett hasn't worked, I can still be a good quarterback, but I might need to acquiesce to some of the things that we can do to help the rest of this team out a little bit and maybe try and make some changes with the offense. Again, it's not like Todd Downing is one of these Shanahan McVay guys, but you go back and look when he was calling plays for the Titans in 2021 and 2022, they were 7th in the NFL in success rate on they used play action pass, 7th most in percentage of the time. They were 6th in percentage of plays with motion. Like, they did move around and do some of those things structurally that help their guys out a little more. Now, having Derrick Henry sort of the ultimate trump card for those teams, but I do wonder if at this point now everything's got to be on the table for them offensively.
Well, let's listen. We'll see. The product will be on the field. Will they move more? Will there be more motion? Obviously, everybody was waiting for Aaron Rodgers to speak about this. Not only his O coordinator, but his good buddy Nathaniel Hackett had been stripped of his duties. So Aaron Rodgers stepped to the microphone. Everybody was expecting fire, and we didn't really get it. Do we have the Aaron Rodgers sound? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew there'd be changes after they let Robert go. I had conversations with Brick over the 2 days. I knew that he was thinking about it, leaning toward it, and I told him I'd back him up whatever he decided.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, Dad. That's why I wonder if there's going to be a willingness to change going forward, because that was not a guy who felt like throwing his weight around. That was a guy who understood the position they're in and that things needed to change. So Aaron seems to get it as much as anybody. We'll see how that translates on the field now that the Jets have actually shuffled the deck and made the changes on offense that people really wanted to see. Jesse, let's look ahead to the rest of the weekend here. Big one with the Ravens and the Commanders matching up two of the better quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Yeah, two offenses that are humming, set to face off in this one. So Jaden Daniels, we have not been able to stop talking about him, which has naturally led to comparisons to another very good quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Let's hear his response to those comparisons.
Yeah, I think it's go out there and just appreciate each individual for who they are. So I don't like when people really try to compare me to Lamar, and vice versa. We're two different players. And just go out there, just appreciate what's the quarterback play that's being played. So that's what I try to do, just appreciate everybody for who they are.
So, obviously Commanders have been doing much better than we expected. A win against the Ravens would be, insane. But what do you guys think of this matchup and how these quarterbacks have been playing?
They've both been incredible, Dad. Jaden Daniels has been sensational so far this season.
Yeah, he has, but this I think is going to come down to Derrick Henry against the Washington run defense. That's bottom half of the league, giving up I think 130 yards in the game, and we know Baltimore's rushing for over 200 a game between Lamar and Derrick and what they're doing. And for Jaden Daniels, the issue, Mike, with Baltimore all year has been their back seven giving up explosive plays, being over 15 yards. They've given up a ton of big plays. So that has Terry McLaurin written all over it. And McLaurin and Jaden Daniels hooking up down the field. The Baltimore's been so susceptible to the big play.
Baltimore loaded up to stop the run a while back, and their back end's paved for it. You mentioned that. They've given up 40 plays. 40 explosive pass plays so far this season. That's 4 more than the next closest NFL defense right now. Now, good news on the injury report. Marlon Humphrey looks like he's going to be able to go this week. Ronnie Stanley able to go. And so, Dad, that's really going to be the key, because Washington, we've seen, they don't throw deep super often. This is still an offense that I think when you look at what's allowed Jaden Daniels to be successful, it's actually been the run game as the bedrock here. And for the second straight week, Brian Robinson's missing practice time in that backfield, but him and Austin Eckler combined certainly with what Jaden can do as a scrambling runner have really made this offense go, and then allowed them to take advantage of some of those deep shots to guys like Terry McLaurin. And so that's going to be the real thing, is can they have enough opportunities and continue to convert on them against a Baltimore team that I think game script wise, you mentioned it, the biggest mismatch for me is going to be Baltimore up front offensively against that Washington defense. Because after week 1, Baltimore really seems to have figured out a better version of this offensive line. They've been more comfortable as they've leaned fully into that identity again of being the top rushing team in the NFL. And so I think that's going to make it a lot different scenario than what we saw last week in Cleveland, where the foundation's so broken there. Deshaun Watson's obviously a shell of his former self. That defense is able to tee off in a way that I don't think they're going to be able to against this Ravens outfit.
We talk about Baltimore running the ball, leading the league in rushing and going against a bottom half run defense in Washington. Washington is second in the league in rushing. They're right behind Baltimore. They're averaging about 178 yards a game. So the only problem is Baltimore's defense is number one in the league against the run, giving up 60 yards a game. So they're going to be a way more tougher to run on than Washington's front seven is going to be to run on. So while we talk about the quarterbacks, you wonder how much the running attack. Now, Washington's going to try and run. You have to attempt to run, and we'll see how successful that they can be just trying to hit it. You'll get, it's when you get short gain, and then you pop one to get a big gain, because they're very astute at rushing the ball as well.
They are. I think it's going to be interesting to see the tack that Cliff Kingsbury takes in this game. Would you think about passing to set up the run in this one? Would you try and attack Baltimore where they're most vulnerable a little bit earlier than normal? And I do want to give Jaden Daniels a big compliment and shout out for the area in his game. I think he's come the furthest is already taking hits off his body better than he did in college, better than he did even earlier this season. You're starting to see him really understand how to take care of himself at the end of runs in the pockets. And so I think that's going to go a long way for this team. The Ravens are 7-point favorites, Dad. Ultimately, I think they win by that number and maybe even a little bit more. I like the Ravens in this game. I think especially now that they've got some guys healthy, this is a group that's starting to figure out how to finish games a little bit better, but has the foundation, especially up front. Going to be an awesome matchup. We've talked about Mark Andrews in this tight end room trying to get more online. The linebacker core for Washington with Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner has been awesome this year and had a big game last week. Will be fun to watch them go at it in the middle of the field, but I think the Ravens win by the margin in this one. What do you think?
I think so as well. I think Washington's going to have to rely on passing a little more. Now, if that means Jaden Daniels scrambling, he's leading 244 rushing yards on dropbacks when he has to scramble. He certainly can make hay if he's on the move. But ultimately, I think Baltimore does win this game by more than 7. I think they control it with the running game against that Washington front 7 and ultimately win by more than 7.
All right, we got the Lions and the Cowboys is another big game this weekend. Lions 3-point favorite on the road at Dallas. Dad, did this Cowboys team find anything last time out? We know it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. They've got guys missing on defense still. Do you think that there's any way that the Cowboys can somehow come out and salvage what would be by far the biggest win of their season?
I just think Detroit's going to be too much for them with the injuries that Dallas has. Between the running attack and the passing attack, Detroit can have an explosive offense that they can have. And you're still relying on Dak and CeeDee Lamb, which has certainly worked out pretty well, throwing Jake Ferguson as well. They actually got a little bit of a running game in that last game, which was somewhat surprising, but had to be a confidence builder for them as Dowdle ran the ball pretty darn well. At least better than they had been rushing all year. But I think Detroit just overall is a better team.
I would agree. Tyler Guyton, I heard Jerry Jones the other day say he's hopeful that he'd be able to go this Sunday. Was lost with a knee injury last weekend for a little bit. But whether he's out there, whether you've got Tyler Smith, like the edges of that defense aren't going to have a ton of fun trying to block Aiden Hutchinson, who's been an unholy terror so far this season for anybody he lines up against. Dad, we still say he probably needs a little bit more opposite him, especially with some of the injury they had earlier this season. But, man, even though he's got all the attention coming his way, he's been incredible. And I'd imagine for wherever he lines up at, whether it's against Terrence Steele on the right side or whoever is in at left tackle, that's an automatic mismatch for the Detroit Lions.
Without a doubt. Quite honestly, I think that the best person to play tackle is Tyler Smith kicking out to tackle over Tyler Guyton, who's been struggling. But if Guyton can be back, Smith can go back to playing guard. But you're right. For Aiden Hutchinson, it's basically pick a side. If it's Guyton at left tackle and Steele at right tackle, just pick a side and have that 150-mile-an-hour motor running and just create incredible pressure, which he's been doing.
He certainly has. I just still think for Dallas on the other side, while there were things that we've seen over the last couple of weeks that looked like improvement for the Dallas defense, and they deserve a ton of credit for going out there without two of their best players and managing as well as they did. You're now going against the final boss. And, oh, by the way, on the other side, the Detroit Lions look like they're going to get Frank Ragnow back at center. You saw Dan Campbell talking the other day saying he got randomly jacked up against the wall in the facility by some guy who just starts hitting him. And he said it's Frank trying to show him that the pec's okay. He's a full participant in practice. So if that O-line's healthy, I just think it's ultimate strength on ultimate weakness.
Yeah, for Dallas, they're third in the league, averaging 271 yards passing a game. They're going to need every yard of that or more, I think, to pull this game out.
All right, Football Friday here on GoJo and Golic. Pumped to bring in our next guest, a guy who's been on this show a few times, Pro Bowl left tackle Terron Armstead from the Miami Dolphins, kind enough to join us on their bye week. Terron, man, how you doing?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Oh,
I'm doing well.
Your beard is doing well. That beard is for real.
Hey, stop, man. Stop. I'm too big to be blushing. Too big to blush. Come on, man.
too big to blush is a great way to describe it, man. But, you got time to sit and reflect on how great the beard looks on the bye week here. For you guys, how big is this? How critical is having that chance to sort of stop and reload right now at this point in the season?
Yeah, man, we had just got a huge win for us against the division opponent last weekend. So follow that up with this bye week, get a chance to get some guys healthy, really dissect what we just did and what we're trying to do moving forward. So I think it came at a great time for us.
Well, it obviously you don't have a choice in the say of when a bye week is, and you make the best of it whenever it is. Is it better to have it earlier in the season like this, or later in the season, or do you not care?
I actually was just thinking about that. Throughout my years, it's fallen in different weeks, of course. I don't think it really. I think every season is so individual. It depends on what that team needs at the time. I think for us, it's landing at a good spot. We got some guys that's been banged up the past few weeks, whether they've been playing or not. So, and for us trying to build some momentum to run some games, string some wins along, I think it's a perfect time for us.
You mentioned the big win again in the division against the Patriots this last weekend. What can you guys take away from that? What worked well for you in that game that you think you guys can try and build on coming off this break?
The run game. The run game. There's no secret, man. That's something that has to be a staple of our offense. It has to be the foundation of everything that we do in order to be successful. And we have the ability to do so. We have a stable of running backs that are all home run threats. And up front, man, we're trying to road grade and move people and open lanes. So regardless of the opponent, regardless of, where we are, where we playing, what they were playing on, we got to be able to run the ball.
And as far as passing, obviously Tua is still out with a concussion. So a couple of quarterbacks have come in. What's the procedure for an O-line? We talk about receivers dealing with different quarterbacks. How about an offensive lineman with cadence and just style of quarterback play, the differences?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's very, very few people that actually pay attention or really just know the details and the nuances that changes when the quarterback changes. Not just there's a new guy back there. There's a new way that the terminology is coming out in the huddle. The cadence with Snoop, with Tyler Huntley, his snap count it was so much more delayed than Tua. Like the first couple of days of practice, it was very segmented with guys coming off the ball because he's holding the snap count. So it was like, why team? So like everybody jumping off sides opposed to Tua where he rolls through. So just trying to get those little details, which is huge. You got to snap the ball on time, but that's a small little detail that people don't even think about. And also like his set point in the pocket where he's planning on throwing the ball. Tua likes to sit around 7-8 yards. So Snoop might be 10 yards, 11 yards. That changes my set. It changes where I need to intersect with the defensive end in order to prevent him to get to the quarterback. So it's a lot of things that goes into it with the quarterback change. But the guys that we had stepped in, they've been phenomenal, man. They try to make it as seamless as possible, try to be close to Tua as possible as far as a set point and a snap count. So we're working through some things.
So dealing with the changes, do you also, as an offensive tackle, I'll separate you from the guards in the center, as an offensive tackle feel picked on this year that a point of reference for the referees is the lineup of the right and left tackle of lining up too deep and getting called for it?
It's crazy, man. There's always something. Every year they have a point of emphasis and they go overkill. So I was watching that game. Who was it? Was it the Eagles and Chiefs? I want to say that first week where they called a bunch of penalties on.
Oh, the Ravens and Chiefs. It was on Ronnie Stanley.
Ronnie Stanley.
Yes. I was watching that game. I was hot. I was like going crazy because I see Ronnie consciously moving up. And what they were saying is like his helmet wasn't breaking the plane, but this is this man's stance. He's taken this stance and it's set a million times. So to change his body position and his stance will change everything for him. And it was unfortunate, but thankfully they have calmed down with that penalty, and we're conscious about it too, trying to be up on the ball.
Certainly, like you said, there's so many fine details that go into every play that having to change something like that on the fly is huge. And for you guys, you kind of had to do that at a macro level this year, changing as much as you've mentioned with Tua. For Mike McDaniel, your head coach, who's obviously an integral part in your guys' offense as well, what was his message to you guys when Tua went down on how you were going to have to do things offensively and the way that he's kind of manned the ship since then?
Yeah, I mean, that night Tua went down, it was just more so just focused on him as a person. We didn't even talk football. We didn't get into what to expect. And then just moving forward into that week as we started to progress and prepare for our upcoming game, it's more so like I just stated, that run game has to be everything needs to come off of that, whether the other team knows it or not. And I think Sunday was our first time being able to stick to that plan, trust that plan, and actually execute. So now we see it when we have it on film that this is our way of success. And now we have to just channel that and continue to emphasize the run game.
You know, you came into the league. I'm trying to remember around the lawsuit time with the concussion, around when the rules kind of were changing for defense and the hits, and on you know that brought about concussions. How have you seen the change from the league as far as dealing with head injuries?
Yeah, man, the league, they definitely put you through an extensive process once you have suffered a concussion. So I missed week 4 with a concussion that I suffered in Seattle. And it had been 10 years. It's been 10 seasons since my last concussion. And the protocols, the tests, the psych exams, the independent doctors, it was 20 times more than what I had to do 10 years ago in order to return to play, to be clear. So they're definitely paying attention to it. They're doing their due diligence for sure. It's just a tricky thing, man. We play a violent game, and it's impossible to prevent completely. But I do appreciate the fact that they have put so much focus and energy, time and energy into this process before players are able to come back.
You mentioned from a human standpoint, we've seen him around the team with you guys. How's Tua doing? How's he been since that as he's been recovering?
He's been well, man. He's been well. He's been like a huge boost of energy. He's sticking his head into different meeting rooms, trying to see any way that he can help. He can add input and value. He's the leader of the team. Still, man. He's helping Snoop and Skylar tremendously. He's making sure those guys are as ready as possible. He's been great, man. He's excited. He's so ready to be back on the field with us and lead us to some victories, man. So I love where he is his mindset and his approach to everything. He's handled it like a true champion.
Yeah, the bye week certainly helps him, giving him an extra week without a game before getting back on the field. Speaking of bye week, what do you do during your bye week? What's the work week like? How does Mike McDaniel put you to guys much work during the bye week?
Yeah, so we had a couple practices Monday and Tuesday, and then we were able to get out. So I flew back to Dallas. So I'm hanging out here, especially with the hurricane that was approaching. I was able to get out before that. So definitely prayers and thoughts to all of Florida and anybody affected from Hurricane Milton. Very, very serious. But I flew out here to Dallas with my kids. I'm at the gym right now, get some work in, staying in shape, staying ready for when we get back to playing. But my twin daughters, they play AAU basketball. They won AAU national championship some months ago. So let's just put that out there. They're nice. They're nice. Shout out to my girls, Trinity and Tatiana. But they have a basketball tournament this weekend that I'm excited for. We might hit the Texas State Fair tonight too.
Hey, that AAU crowd is tough though, isn't it? AAU some serious business.
It's real deal. It's real deal, man. Parents are going crazy. It was great though. Watching them go out and win that championship, I was losing it.
I have to imagine being a sports parent now and watching your daughters go through that tougher than anything you've ever been through playing yourself.
Man, what? Listen, Mike, it's because I can't do nothing. I'm supporting. Once you're the athlete, you feel like you can affect the game, you can make an impact. But just as a parent, you just want to see them do well. You want to see them make every shot, which is not even possible. But it's tough, man. But I love it.
So you say you may go to the Texas State Fair. If you go there, what fried food? What food will you eat that you'll fry? They fry such crazy things there. Yeah. What would you try?
Listen, OG, I'm a traditional classic man. I get a funnel cake in my hand. I'm good. Powdered sugar all over my clothes. I don't care. That's it. That's all I need.
There we go. You know what? A man who appreciates the classics and who's still out here grinding on the off week, getting the work in. Miami Dolphins fans, you are in good hands with Terron Armstead. Terron, we appreciate the time as always, man. Congrats to you and your family on all the success. Congrats to you this season, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon. All right, man?
I appreciate you guys always, man. Love.
Well, now I'm pissed I don't have funnel cake. That's the only downside of talking about that with Terron is I'm sitting here waiting for the balloon festival to go on here. I don't know if the Lunars like carnival food as much as the Texas State Fair does. That, by the way, Dad, what a fond memory of our time at ESPN getting to go down there. I don't know. Did you get to go down there a bunch of times for the Oklahoma-Texas game? We only did one with Golic and Wingo, and I remember eating to the point of almost dying.
I mean, you just eat till you're sick, and you try and go in with a plan, but the plan just goes out the window when you just see all the food, all the different things they fry. And I'm a big kind of sweets cake guy anyway, shockingly. So I will try anything fried. But I dig the funnel cake, but you can get the funnel cake basically at any fair. So I'm definitely going to try something different, and I'm sure I did. I don't remember, it was so long ago. But man, you just give in to the fact that you're going to eat fried food and you're going to be sick.
The weirdest thing I saw when I was there was deep fried Coca-Cola, and I didn't venture over to see what that actually entailed. The other one, and I was talking to Chris Budden about this, her and Nicole Arbach, our buddy, over on Sirius XM on their show on Wednesday. And Chris is from Texas, so she's kind of the local down there. They did a fried lasagna the other year that she said she tried. That was incredible. So would be all aboard that hype train. My favorite thing, though, is going to any fair or carnival. You obviously all have the games and rides, and I will never forget. It's seared into my memory for as long as I live. On the side of one of those basketball games where it's like the untenable rim up top that you're trying to make it in to win a stuffed bear, on the side of it was this beautiful spray painted wall art mural of Nicolas Cage's character from Con Air. Just in full, full. It was when he's got like the tank top on and the jeans down there. It's later in the movie. I think it might be in like Give Back the Bunny era of the movie, but it was an incredible homage to one of the greatest film choices of all time.
That is hilarious. I do have a list of the fried foods at last year's State Fair. It's anything from alligator to bacon cinnamon roll to a baked potato, banana pudding, a BLT, butter, Cajun fried ribs, catfish, cheese on a stick cheesecake, chicken strips, well, that's a churros, obviously, corn dogs, crab tater bites, and that's just it. Goes the whole alphabet. I'm just on the C's. I can't go through the entire list.
We have strayed so far from God's light.
The whole alphabet. Deep fried the whole alphabet.
Unbelievable.
I'm sick.
All right, guys, time for Cash It or Trash It here on GoJo and Golic. Cash It or Trash It is presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Let's take a look at the college slate this weekend and take a look at Ole Miss on the road at LSU. Ole Miss in this game looking at about 3-point favorites on the road. Coming off a big bounce-back win against South Carolina. I think they keep it rolling. 52% of the money on the spread for LSU at DraftKings Sportsbook. But I think Ole Miss, that much improved defense this year in Lane Kiffin's outfit, go in, cover the spread, and get another big-time win heading into a huge Saturday slate.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Jesse Cofield, Mike Golic Jr. and Mike Golic Sr. here. Guys, in college football, we had a little news on the conference front as the commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten met. They had a conversation. They showed some unity here, talking about private equity, the new CFP contract. And this is big, right, guys? Because any of these changes that might come about with private equity and stuff, not likely to gain much traction if you don't have Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey behind it.
Yeah, Dad, this is what I said the other day and became abundantly clear during the course of these meetings, which I thought was interesting. If you're looking at what their goals clearly were in the show of force from this meeting, it was, one, to make very clear that the SEC and the Big Ten, at least in their minds, are not trying to do this to separate themselves from the ACC and the Big 12. They said this is basically, hey, it's hard to schedule getting us two just together. We're going to loop in Brett Yormark from the Big 12, Jim Phillips from the ACC, and talk about the plans and the visions we have for the future of the sport. They said they want to see the 12-team playoff before they're going to make change. Whatever you believe in that, I thought it was interesting that that was a very clear goal and response to some of the criticism they were clearly receiving from this meeting. But then the other one that was stated in very plain letter by Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and by Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, who said, I have yet to see a single thing in any plan that I've learned details about that contains things that we couldn't do ourselves or with our Power 4 colleagues. At the end of the day, there's a strong commitment that you have the ability to do all of this ourselves. The notion that college football is broken, what we do is broken, is just not right. So Tony Petitti saying what we've heard Greg Sankey kind of say before, Dad, which is they don't seem to think they need any of these private equity folks. So all that stuff people want to talk about with these plans, to me, it's a non-starter with how these two seem to be morally opposed to what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would agree as long as their plan includes everybody and isn't Big Ten and SEC strong and leaves out the other guys, because I agree with what Tony Petitti said. If you can do something that an outside group would come in and do, and you can do the exact same thing, do the exact same thing. You know, why bring in somebody from the outside who's going to take money from you? And even though they say the venture capitalists don't want control, they're going to want some control, and you're just going to have one more person or entity to answer to. So yeah, if you as long as your moral compass, and that can be an iffy thing, as long as your moral compass is pointing north for everybody's benefit, then yeah, I would say absolutely do it yourself.
Oh, I want to make it abundantly clear. That is not the case, I believe. I don't think moral compass is governed anywhere in this. And remember, like, for all that they're going to say, like, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are coming out here. This is a part of a conversation about scheduling alliance and a bunch of this stuff. This is not an attack on them personally. I'm not judging these two men's character. I'm just saying these are two leagues that we've already seen through the early course of the college football playoff expanded discussion that have been pushing to try and get more bids than everybody else. Like, it is very clearly a lookout for number one deal still, but here with all the conversation around this meeting, I think they were hyper aware of that and how they tried to present this. So I don't think they're going to be any more or less aware of the other conferences going forward, more than just to say they still believe that they would rather keep working with the people inside the sport they've been working with all along than all of a sudden invite in these outsiders that they know are going to mess with their cash, which to me makes sense right now. I've had my own misgivings with the notion of private equity money coming into the sport and some of the things that I would think they would do that would be for the worse for college football and for college athletics in general. And so it's sort of, no matter how you get there, I kind of agree with the point they're making.
Yeah, as long as the line of I have learned details, I haven't learned anything that contains anything that we couldn't do ourselves. As long as that's true, I'm with you. But with two guys are basically running the show, I get a little nervous as to intentions and what the final outlay will look like. So we'll see.
Always be nervous. This is college sports and this is college football. Yeah. No one's been running this thing. It's succeeded in spite of itself. Nothing matters, as our friend Alex Kirshner always says. Eat Arby's. Let's get to the actual games on the field this weekend, because we got some baller ones coming up here. It's time to look at our college football slate. With Cheez-It this college football season, we're feeling the cheesiest with Cheez-It. And Jesse, we got some big timers coming up this weekend. So let's start with Red River, where everybody is going to be excited about all that fried food we were just reading.
Yeah, number 1 Texas, number 18 Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. So which quarterback story of this one is bigger, right? The return of Quinn Ewers or Oklahoma's true freshman QB, Michael Hawkins Jr., making just his second start ever?
And, well, Dad, Jesse, the first start for a true freshman in the history of the Red River rivalry. So this is big time for him, a massive stage. And, Dad, I obviously think that's a huge one in terms of the history of this rivalry. But I think nationally the bigger story is Quinn Ewers coming back for this Texas team who has eyes on a national championship, who's been one of the teams so far that separated themselves. And while Arch Manning has played really well and Steve Sarkisian says the offense doesn't change, I still think the benefit of his experience at the helm of this team for an offense that's got so many new parts that have been successful in the skill position, I think it's huge to see, maybe not even just how he performs, because I think overall they're more talented than Oklahoma on the line of scrimmage. We've talked about the O-line issues. This is, to me, about a checkup for Quinn Ewers and how he looks physically coming off this hiatus where they've been able to have extra time to let him recover.
I think overall that's the picture, but for this game, I'm more interested in see what Michael Hawkins, a true freshman for Oklahoma, is going to do. I expect Ewers to play well. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago in the Red River rivalry against Oklahoma, he threw for 4 touchdowns in a 49-0 win, and that was his first start back after missing 3 games with a collarbone injury. Now he missed a couple of games with an oblique, and he's coming back. So I expect him to play well. Michael Hawkins, who got in the Tennessee loss and was, 11 for 18 with a touchdown in Tennessee, and then his first start against Auburn was 10 of 15, wasn't asked to throw it a ton in a nice interception, actually, that sealed that deal for Oklahoma against Auburn in that win. So I'm really excited to see what this true freshman is going to do on by far the biggest stage he has ever been on. This is going to be a real test for him against, as we talked about, when he has an O-line in front of him, that certainly has some question marks.
And Colin Simmons on the other side for Texas, leading that team with 4 sacks as one of the better freshmen in the country. So that's a group that we talked about after last year. They've got some big bodies in the middle that have been able to offset some of that loss of Tavondre Stratton and Byron Murphy, but this has been a plane built out of edge rushers that's been able to complement this offense really well. So Texas is 14-point favorites in this one, Dad. I tend to think they'll cover the number. I understand rivalry games can get a little wonky at times, but throw in a true freshman, even an incredibly talented one who, is from Texas, has all this crossover, I still think is going to be too tall a task against what I think is the unquestioned best team in college football.
I do as well, especially if Texas gets up a couple of scores and it makes Hawkins, a true freshman, have to throw more than he wants to. Again, he threw 18 times against Tennessee, 15 times against Auburn. So if he's expected to throw in the high 20s or 30s or, God forbid, 40 times, that's going to be tough for them to come back on. By the way, this is the first time since 1929 that this game has been played where both teams are coming off a bye. So both teams got a little extra time, and obviously the time for Ewers to heal up and the time for Hawkins, a true freshman, to get more time in practice and film study.
Going to be awesome to see what the coaches come up with in this one. Steve Sarkisian, one of the best play callers in the sport. Brent Venables, one of the best defensive minds in the last decade plus of the sport. That clash between those two in particular, I'm looking forward to. Jesse, let's get to the big one of the Big Ten this weekend. Ohio State and Oregon, the first real test for either team this season and a chance to put one of their names on the map.
The first real test, the first Big Ten matchup between these two teams. Somebody's taken their first L of the season. Who do you guys think it's going to be?
Dad, Ohio State 3-point favorites on the road in this one. They have come out so far and checked every box. Oregon, I think right now is suffering from a little bit of perception hangover going back to that Boise State game where Ashton Jeanty put up some big numbers really on 3 plays. I saw Jeff Schwartz, our buddy and former Oregon Duck offensive lineman, pointing out that on the 3 plays that weren't huge explosive, Ashton Jeanty was relatively held in check in that game. But between that and the changes they've made on offense, Dad, is that enough for Oregon and Dylan Gabriel to be able to go and pull off the upset now in this game?
I don't think so. I think this Ohio State defense, which, by the way, is number 1 in the country, giving up just over 200 yards a game. And I know Oregon's averaging 458 yards a game. Dylan Gabriel, it leads the nation in completion percentage. But I think this Ohio State defense is going to be a little too tough. We know the offense can score. They can run the ball as well. They're great in the red zone. 21 red zone trips for Ohio State, 20 touchdowns. Again, 20 of 21 trips in the red zone have resulted in a touchdown. Great battle on the Oregon defense. Jordan Birch is tied for 8th in the nation with 5 sacks. Ohio State has allowed just 4 sacks in total all year. So some nice matchups on the field. And I know this one's in Oregon, a tough place to play, but I just think Ohio State's too good a team.
Yeah, I think on the other side that you mentioned the Oregon offense, they've been putting up by most people's standards great numbers this season, averaging 458 yards a game, 35 points per. But you look and compare it to what just happened in the rearview mirror with Bo Nix last year, 531 yards a game, 44 points a game. They were a shredder that was able to push the ball downfield a little bit more. We'll see how much the improved offensive line for Oregon stacks up against Oregon State. They reshuffled and put Iapani Lalalu on its center and move the rest of the group around there. They had given up 7 sacks in the first 2 games. They have not given up a sack in the last 3 games since that switch. So big for them against an Ohio State defensive front that's going to stress them out. But I'm with you, Dad. I think Ohio State, I talked about the other day, offensive line has made the leap in my mind this year. This will be their best test so far. Iowa's a good defensive front. I think Oregon's a little bit more talented in the ways that Ohio State needs to see. And so I think that offensive line will be enough before we get to, all of the cavalcade of weapons on offense for Ohio State that we already know. I think Ohio State wins this one. I think they cover the 3 points. And I think we start having that conversation about them and Texas as the 2 teams everyone else is looking up at right now.
Yeah, I think so as too. I think this is, and again, these 2 teams could meet again in the Big Ten championship game and in the playoffs. It is one of those like Georgia and Alabama where both teams should probably end up in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the other part of this is it's going to be just as much about the score. Hey, Ohio State, if they end up going on and win this one, everyone expects it. It's a $20 million roster. It's all the things that we've expected about this team. But it's going to be, how does it look from the Oregon side? Because this really is, for both of them, Ohio State hasn't played anybody yet. Oregon's at least challenged themselves somewhat in the early going. They had one of their biggest rivalry games in September for the first time in the history of the rivalry. Going to be fascinated with that one. I think Ohio State does get it done. Jesse, let's get one more bit of Big Ten action in here.
Yeah, Penn State quietly crept up to number 4 in the nation. They're traveling across the country to play USC. How important is this game for USC and Lincoln Riley? Is his seat getting a little hot? They fell out of the top 25 after that loss to Minnesota last week.
You know what? I don't think it's getting hot yet because still I saw the stat the other day that like the last 5 quarterbacks to play for Lincoln Riley have all started in the NFL in the last couple of seasons. It's mind-blowing what he's been able to continue to produce. But, Dad, there's no doubt they've had an adjustment being made. Lincoln said, he's like, hey, it's obviously physical along the lines of scrimmage, but you also just get fewer possessions. The games are slowed down much more in this league versus the one they came in. And you've seen their offense struggle to kind of keep pace at times with some of that physicality, even on the perimeter. I thought that was where it showed up the most with Minnesota in that loss, was how physical Minnesota's defensive backs and safeties were with the wideouts and skill players from Southern Cal. So do you think they can get it done with Penn State coming in here and trying to stamp their top 5 ranking as well?
Well, I think Penn State, obviously, with Aller throwing the ball, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, but they're averaging 217 yards running the ball. And while this USC defense is certainly better than last year's defense, this is going to be a big test about that physical play where Penn State will want to play some smash mouth and run the ball and control the ball. So I think and this is a kind of we keep wanting Penn State to separate, and they're ranked number 4. So they're kind of given the mantle of a top 5 team, but we're still waiting for them to separate from Ohio State and Michigan. They have from Michigan. Michigan is down, but Ohio State, and try and actually win the Big Ten. This is a big step forward. I don't think USC is as good as we thought, but you're traveling to the West Coast. It's a big time matchup. How do they go play when the lights are bright? I do think they run the ball and try and play some smash mouth.
I think Penn State wins defensively. They've allowed 21 points in the last 14 quarters for a team that is once again undefeated to start the season. I think they win this one on the road. I think this is a great opportunity for Drew Aller and company to keep pushing this thing down the field and set the tone they've been trying to in the Big Ten to show they're not your old usual Penn State squad. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We are excited to welcome in our friend Jordan Brenner from the Underdogs podcast to talk a little bit of NFL, but I was curious. We were off air sitting here talking. We had great Major League Baseball action last night. And Jordan, you have joined the chorus of people that I've heard kind of simmering with this discussion over the course of the postseason about just the nature of these series and how it's really kind of shown. And we've seen a bunch of the top seeds struggle early on in the postseason back to the wild card. Is this something that Major League Baseball is going to have to take a look at, the nature of these postseason series length and how bad it is at picking an actual champion?
I think it's something they need to do. I don't know if it's something they want to do because there's two sides of the coin, right? It's a really bad way to determine who the best team is, but it's really exciting. So they probably enjoy the fan engagement and the randomness and the unpredictability of the whole thing. But the fact is, you learn a lot more about which team is the best team in baseball over the course of 162 games than you do in a 3 out of 5 series, for sure.
So this kind of works against what you do in trying to figure out underdogs and go to the statistical variations, when it's just kind of a crapshoot, you think?
I mean, it's really funny, right? Other than there's a little bit of a bias towards teams that actually hit the heck out of the ball, but some of the old staples like, defense and pitching wins in the playoff. Nope. Starting pitching. Nope. You've seen the Tigers with this chaos pitching approach. Give me a good bullpen and an offense, and I feel a little bit better about my chances. But the bottom line, and you see this all regular season, anybody can win a 2 out of 3 game series, except maybe the White Sox, and anyone can win 3 out of 5. So what are we really learning here? And then you've got, all this pearl clutching about Aaron Judge didn't have a hit in 2 games. You know how many 2 or 3 game samples over the course of the year he went like 0 for 12? It's not a clutch thing. It's just random. And it's I don't know. Look, I'm excited. I'm a New Yorker. We're one step closer to a Subway Series. It's fun, but I just don't think this is telling us who the best team is.
Yeah, well, as you meant, when you said rewarding randomness, chaos, and the potential for upsets, I immediately thought of the March Madnessification of all of this as the premier television product is also, I think, the worst model for picking a championship, maybe in all of sports. And so anytime you're getting closer to that, you're usually straying farther from God's light. Let's talk about a place where the stratification's been a little bit clearer. Underdogs in the NFL this season, Jordan, it's been pretty staggering to start. We talked about some of the reasons why with you and with Peter over the last few weeks, but how stunned are you by seeing the record that 6-point dogs have had so far this year?
It happened again last week. So dogs of 6 or more are 16-2-1 against the spread. I've never seen anything like that. They're 11-8 straight up. 2 more wins last week with the Giants at Seattle, the Cardinals at San Francisco. If you had bet $100 on each of those 19 games, you'd be up a cool $2,184 right now. It's crazy. And there's 4 more of those matchups this week. The Panthers against the Falcons, the Patriots against the Texans, the Browns against the Eagles, and the Commanders against the Ravens. I can give you reasons why I wouldn't take any of those underdogs, but I could have done that the past 5 weeks.
Is the bottom going to drop out on this at some point as we get deeper into the season? It should, right?
It should. And I'm curious what you guys think is motivating this too, because I think we're in a period in every sport. Actually, I was thinking about this morning and during my morning shower, where I have all my great ideas. I think this is the period in my lifetime where there's the least number of dominant teams across all sports. Right? We're seeing it in baseball right now. NBA has more parity than we've ever seen, and clearly in the NFL, nobody's beating anyone by wide margins week after week. So you've got close margins, big spreads. That's immediately going to give your underdogs a better chance. And then these games are being played at a little bit slower pace. We've talked a little bit more about the 2 high safeties, scoring being down, creating more scenarios where underdogs can be in a game and then steal it at the end.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for reasons why, we've talked about some of them relative to the structure of preseason for a lot of these teams. Now, I think all the points you bring up there are incredibly valid, too. I want to know if you put any stock in this one. I saw Chris Long tweeting about this. We mentioned this on the show. The Dan Campbell Lions effect, where anyone playing the Lions has suffered a hangover. Everyone so far that the Lions have beat this season have lost the following week. Have you got any thoughts or insights on what could potentially be driving that? And are you now going to tail the Dan Campbell Lions hangover effect?
I mean, ankle bites take a long time to heal, which is very clearly what's happening. I would look, having just heard this for the first time, my thought, and I will turn it again to my two favorite former football players. Do you think there's a level of physicality that the Lions bring to the game that's different from other teams, and that's a lasting effect?
I would definitely think so. I mean, the way they want to challenge you physically is a hallmark of that team, Dad. So I would not be stunned if that was at least part of it. And some of it too, you know, I haven't looked to see who's played on a short week after that, because I think that's the one thing we've seen too, is some of these teams come up on tough Thursday nighters where you're on a short week, and that turnaround seems to be as impactful as it's ever been.
Oh, listen, all play in football is physical, so it's not to say that other teams, boy, they're just soft. They're not. But some do play a more physical brand, and Dan Campbell's team does play a more physical brand of football. I'm interested, you mentioned the 4 teams that are 6-point dogs. Which of those teams, getting specific now, do you think has the best chance of continuing on the tradition of winning, and which has the least chance?
I think there's a little too much of a market move to the Ravens here. The Commanders getting 7 points with the way Jaden Daniels has been playing and the way they're moving the ball on offense, and what we've seen very recently teams do against the Ravens defense. I think that's too much. I understand that people are evaluating the Commanders still a little bit on underlying metrics, odd last season, but the fact is they're a 4-1 team and they look really damn good. So I have no problem taking 7 points with the Commanders and hoping for the best against the Ravens. God, 9.5 points is a lot of points for the Eagles to be laying, even if it's to Deshaun Watson and a broken team. So, you know, I again, when we talk about just big margins not happening this year, I have no problem backing the Browns either. And then, quite frankly, the Patriots at home with Drake May, they've been better than I thought they would be in general. The defense keeps them in games, and I think that's a tough spot for the Texans coming off a big win to go on the road. I could see the Patriots keeping that close.
Where are you guys at on this notion? Because I've seen a lot of people push back. We had the wild swings of discussion about Drake May taking over against a team in the Houston Texans that's pressured quarterbacks at the highest rate in the NFL, against a Patriots team that we know Jacoby Brissett was the most pressured quarterback in the NFL while he was the starter of this team. And obviously pointing that out, that it's not an ideal week to start this. But, Dad, especially at the same time, I've seen plenty of pushback now that obviously 1 week is not going to ruin this guy's life. And if the Patriots believe that he is the quarterback whose skill set might be better suited to handle some of this, then getting started now is not the worst thing that could happen in the world. Where are you at? Has the last couple of days now that we've talked about this changed at all your viewpoint on Drake May and what he faces under center this weekend?
Listen, I am, while I think it's earlier, it's certainly earlier than New England wanted to put him out there. I have always been if this is going to be your guy and you don't have a bridge, or the bridge isn't working, in this case, Jacoby Brissett, it's not working, put your guy out there. As long as you think he can handle the moment and he's not wide-eyed, obviously you'll find out in the game, but he's, as I sound like a broken record, how he's doing in practice, how he's doing in the film room, how he's doing at the chalkboard. If you feel he has a grasp of the offense, then put him out there and let him get his eyes watered a little bit. Now, he can move, and he's going to have to move behind that offensive line. But I think it's fine. I think it's a little earlier, certainly, than New England wanted to, but I have no problem starting his clock right now.
And don't you think, isn't there a layer of trust we have to give the team, too? They don't want to get him killed. They recognize how important he is. Don't you think they must be seeing something from him in practice, in film room, and something that would make them comfortable with this move?
I would imagine it's partially that, and also partially they've just got to do something, because clearly, while Jacoby Brissett's a really good player, he's not a world beater that's going to be able to elevate this team. He was there to do exactly what he did, unfortunately, was to be a meat shield. And you saw Jacoby Brissett was kind of struggling with that. He's a competitor and doesn't like the notion of being benched for a rookie, even if he knew that was always going to be part of the plan. And so, yeah, they must think that there's some – and listen, there are things we've talked about with Drake May's skill set that do lend themselves well to this. I still think it's a tall order this weekend for them, given the opponent on the other side, but I'm with you. That's an interesting one. The one that was interesting to me was Browns plus 9.5, though. And the thing that just worries me so much is They took a Washington Commanders defense that had not been the story of the season and made them look like the 85 Bears. And I just don't know if, for all the talk about Deshaun Watson that we have, Jordan, the Cleveland Browns offensive line and the full teardown from last year's where they were one of the better units in the NFL, everyone got injured, your O-line coach leaves, that group has struggled to protect him and struggled to pry open anything in the run game for a non-Nick Chubb back. That seems to just make it a non-starter. So if you're Philadelphia looking to get right where the biggest headline this week was you cut one of the linebackers you tried to sign this offseason, boy, oh boy, the Cleveland Browns offense seems to be soft landing spot for that.
I can't disagree with anything you said. Like I said, from a pure football analysis perspective, this sure looks like it should be a blowout. I'm just saying week after week after week, we've had games that have looked like that have gone the other way. It's just becoming so hard to predict that the idea of being able to get 9.5 points with any team in this league right now is enticing to me if I'm making a bet.
How about a team that's less than a 6-point spread? It's a 3.5 point spread. The Saints at home are 3.5 point underdogs to Tampa Bay. How much should go into that and with a rookie starting and Spencer Rattler for New Orleans?
I think that's a massive change. And what's the hardest part there is we have so little information. We don't know what Spencer Rattler is going to look like. We don't know all the little things Derek Carr was doing to make this offense function. It's so hard to project just how different this team is going to look with a rookie under quarterback. It's a game I would actually more likely stay away from if I'm betting because of the uncertainty. But look, I think you can make a case either way, right? That maybe there's some more mobility there. They scheme some stuff up. They've been playing well. 3.5 is a lot to get at home against a questionable Bucs team. On the other hand, everything you just said about dropping off from a solid veteran to an unknown non-first round rookie is concerning.
Jordan, last one here. We know it's Monday night, so we'll have plenty of time to get to this one. But we've had all the news about the Jets. They're changing play caller. Obviously, Robert Saleh getting fired in the last few days. Todd Downing takes over. Do you think we're in line for any of that new, recently fired head coach bump that we sometimes see for teams, that energy coming off in a big division matchup for them against Buffalo?
Maybe, but I don't know what you guys think. And again, this is another time where I'd love your analysis too. I don't think it's just the play calling with the Jets. I think it's the design of the offense. I remember sitting with Chris Sims years ago when we were both working at Bleacher Report, and he was showing me the Mike McCarthy offense in Green Bay and how just they weren't doing anything that a modern offense does. And this grows out of that. And you could see it with Nathaniel Hackett. So even if the play calling changes, they're not going to be able to change the scheme in a week. So I just have some concerns in general about whether they're running an offense that succeeds in 2024 and whether they're getting enough out of. I still see talent on that offense. I see an upgraded offensive line. I see Breece Hall. I see Garrett Wilson. So I don't know how much Aaron Rodgers has left and whether they're putting anyone in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, I think that ultimately becomes the key. And the real question to this is, no matter what they do tweaking the offense, at its core, it's going to be what you just described. And that ultimately falls on Aaron Rodgers and how much gas he truly has left in the tank. We've seen flashes, and then we've also seen the bottom drop out of this thing. And it's going to be fascinating to see now with this change what comes out more frequently going forward. Jordan, we always appreciate the time and the insight, man. It's been fascinating to watch these dogs go to work in the NFL. We'll see if this weekend holds more of the same, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Dad, the more and more I think and sit and talk about it, Washington seems like the one. If you were going to circle the wagons on a 6 or more point favorite, Washington getting 7 in that game against Baltimore, the way that Jaden Daniels has been playing seems like the spot that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I mean, their offense is putting points on the board. The defense has struggled at times, but the offense is scoring. They getting into a shootout. They're a viable team in a shootout. So yeah, I would definitely take the points in Washington in this one.
This is going to be one, boy, oh boy. I mean, we already talked before the season about our Rookie of the Year picks, and Jaden Daniels was certainly up there. The rookie receivers, as Malik Neighbors dealt with injury and was out last week. Marvin Harrison Jr. certainly had a good start to the year with the Cardinals. But if Jaden Daniels and Washington somehow go off and pull off another one here, it's going to be hard to slow down this hype train. Coming up next, we'll talk to Kenny Albert about another team looking to get started this weekend next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield. And we're going to wrap up our NFL coverage for this Friday with some help from a friend, Kenny Albert, Fox Sports play-by-play announcer, who's going to be on the call for Eagles-Browns this weekend. Celebrating a big-time occasion, too, Kenny. I saw this is going to be your 500th game as a play-by-play announcer for network TV. So congratulations on that milestone. And I don't know, how does that make you feel to now know that you've been at the helm of this thing for 500 games?
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It is crazy. It's kind of surreal that it's 500. And believe it or not, there are actually people that keep track of these things. But I remember my first NFL on Fox game like it was yesterday. It was 9-4-94, the Arizona Cardinals and the LA Rams. The head coaches were Buddy Ryan and Chuck Knox. And to think that it's been 31 years, 500 games is just incredible.
Wow, that's a heck of a memory on that. So I got to ask, because so few have done it, you've called every major sport. Which is the most difficult as a play-by-play to call?
You know, Mike, I get that question a lot, and I've been so fortunate to be involved in all of the major sports. People always think hockey would be the hardest.
Yeah.
To me, it's the easiest because I've done it the longest. The question I always get from up-and-coming broadcasters is, wow, you know, even with all the line changes on the fly and all the European names, but it's sort of like riding a bike. You're calling the game for 60 minutes. Basketball is somewhat similar, but slower. The ball's in action for 48 minutes. Football is the most rhythmic. It's one play, and then it's 20 or 25 seconds. It's another play, 20 or 25 seconds for the color analyst to come in. Baseball, I haven't done as many baseball games as the other sports, so that's always been the most challenging because there's so much downtime between pitches and between batters. Although the last 2 years with the implementation of the pitch clock, it's been great for play-by-play announcers. It really condenses the game. I've also been asked to do some other sports, boxing, track and field, volleyball, water polo at the last Olympics. Those are a lot of fun, but certainly different. Boxing, for example, it could end at any time. So you might want to get all of your good information in really early because you never know when it's going to end. So they're all a lot different. There are some similarities, but you know, hockey and football are the two that I'm probably most associated with. And again, hard to believe it's been 31 years, 500 games. I've had a lot of great partners and a lot of great production folks behind the scenes that I've been fortunate enough to work with.
It's an incredible run, like you said. Yeah, it doesn't happen without the help from a lot of people.
To do?
So
yeah.
The water polo was a lot of fun. It was out of the studio. It was remote, so I wasn't actually there. But I had great partners again who were both Olympians and experts in their sport. Didn't know much about it until about 3 months before the Olympics, but a lot of studying and watching videos of prior events. And it was somewhat similar to hockey, believe it or not, because of the alignment. You know, they're going left to right, right to left. There is 6 plus the goalie as opposed to 5 plus the goalie. And there are a lot of power plays. So people that tuned in, it might have sounded somewhat similar to the sport of hockey.
There we go, waiting for them to drop the gloves in the pool and really make this thing come full circle.
There's a lot of action that goes on underneath the water, believe me.
Yeah.
I always said that's why my sister would have made a great water polo player, because she's an absolute sicko and could tread water for that long. So now we've certainly explored the depths of water polo that people knew they were going to get today on GoJo and Golic here. As we go to game number 500 this weekend, let's look at some of the NFL action you're getting ready to call here. And Kenny, for this Browns team coming in, the situation feels pretty dire right now. What is the sense that you've gotten as you've started to dig into this team about what the leash looks like for Deshaun Watson from here on out?
Well, you know, you look at last year when they won 11 games and Joe Flacco comes in and they used 5 different starting quarterbacks and had a terrific season. This year, different story so far, 1-4. We were there week 3 when they played the Giants and got off to a great start in that game. They forced a turnover on the opening kickoff and go in and score on the next play. And but then the Giants obviously put together a great, 3 quarters plus 14 minutes and wound up winning that game. You know, this week, 1-4, they have to go on the road in Philadelphia, and it's a city that means a lot to their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, who grew up in Philadelphia, played his high school football there. He was a defensive back at Penn, had a terrific career, and now he goes home to coach against the Eagles. As far as Watson, we spoke to him yesterday. We sat down with him in person a couple of weeks ago, and he's remaining positive. When you think about the situation, they've had so many injuries among the skill players, the skill positions. Amari Cooper early in the season, David Njoku, the tight end, one of the best in the league. They hope to get him back. Nick Chubb is on the mend. Hopefully they'll get him back at some point in the near future. So, in talking to the Browns, yes, the record is 1-4, and defensively, you'll look at their rankings, and it's not, as good as they would have hoped over the first 5 weeks. But, there is a positive feeling as far as, hopefully we get some of these guys back and start to put it together.
Yeah, I guess you wonder, there's been so much injury around the Browns that would it be, I guess fair is only, how you judge pigs of what's fair. Would it be fair to think about Jameis Winston coming in and trying to, they always use the term provide a spark.
Right. And we've seen him a little bit early on. They put him in on 4th down. They were 3 for 3. I think it was week 2, the week before the game that I worked. They would put Winston in for that spark. So we've seen it a little bit. But, as far as big picture, we'll see how it goes this week. One of the key aspects that the Browns are focusing on, 3rd down. They've been in so many 3rd and longs and haven't been able to convert. They're only 18% on 3rd down, which is the worst in the league. So that's one of the focuses for Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense this week.
For the Eagles on the other side, so much gets made of the relationship between quarterback and coach, and certainly that's going to be an important part of this. But how impressed have you been by Saquon Barkley and what he's come in and meant to this team after being one of the high-profile acquisitions this offseason?
Yeah, very impressed. I've always been a Saquon Barkley fan. I've worked a lot of his games through the years with the Giants, and obviously the situation was well documented during the offseason with the move from the Giants to the Eagles, and he's been terrific. The outstanding game opening night on that Friday night in Brazil with the 3 touchdowns. And, obviously had the drop against Atlanta. They probably would have won that game. And you could be looking at a 3-1 record now, but, he took full responsibility for that one. But, averaging over 100 yards a game on the ground. He's among the league leaders in yards from scrimmage. Just a terrific all-around player, whether it's running the ball or catching it out of the backfield. So, it's been a great fit there in Philadelphia with Barkley and the Eagles playing close to home.
The only problem is in the last 2 games they're 1-1, but only scored 16 against the Tampa Bay, and in a win against the Saints only scored 15. Is this kind of a missing of A.J. Brown in that offense?
Well, when you're missing Brown, for 3 games, Devontae Smith missed the last game, so they hope to have those guys back. They're obviously a huge part of it. Dallas Goedert's had a great season so far. But, with the Browns, I talked about the 3rd downs. With the Eagles, it's been the first quarter. They've gotten off to slow starts. They haven't scored a point in the first quarter. They're the only team in the NFL. So they've missed some weapons as well, and I'm sure they want to get off to a better start. It's ironic. The Browns, haven't scored more than 18 points in a game. They've struggled offensively, but they've actually scored touchdowns on 3 of their opening drives in the 5 weeks. One of them was a short field after the turnover against the Giants, but for the Eagles, they'd like to erase that 0 in the first quarter for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, that would go a long way. Every coach has that fast start cliche, but it's a cliche because it usually works. So Philadelphia would do well to hopefully get back with that. Like you said, the receiving core getting healthy would certainly go a long way. Kenny, we appreciate all the insight and help on this. Congratulations on number 500 this weekend. Have a great call. We'll all be watching and listening and looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kenny.
Absolutely. Dad, you're telling me you don't remember the first game that you ever called?
No. Oh, actually, you know what? I actually do. It was Jacksonville. I had signed with ESPN to do college games, but before the college season starts, I was the TV analyst for preseason Jacksonville in their first year in the league in '95. And I remember they kicked off. The play-by-play announced the kickoff, went through the play, and then went silent for me to analyze. And I hesitated, and everyone was looking at me, and I was like, okay, I guess I have to talk now. And that was the start of me talking for 3 decades by hesitating.
Wow, the upset of the entire day. My dad actually remembering his first broadcast in the booth. Would not have picked it. All right, guys, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third, 3 quick stories. Send you into the weekend. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review our show. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. And thank you to all of our great guests that stopped by today to help out with the show. We had Terron Armstead from the Miami Dolphins, Jordan Brenner from the Underdog podcast, Kenny Albert, who's going to be on the call this weekend for Fox for the Browns and the Eagles. If you missed any of those great conversations, make sure you check them out wherever you get our podcasts or right here on YouTube as soon as we get done with the show. Guys, let's start off with this. We know the Chicago Bears were very excited about Caleb Williams coming to town here, getting the number 1 overall pick, getting a guy that they think could go and have the effect that they hoped that Justin Fields would have had back in the day. They didn't support Justin the same way. There were plenty of things working against him. And so you figure everyone would have been willing to make the switch, including the folks at the Cost Company. Yet we have this image emerge over the weekend of a bunch of wall decor. You can buy what looks like a Bears version of an American flag at Costco with what has the Caleb Williams 18 jersey on it, only very clearly is not Caleb Williams underneath. Guys, I don't know if that's like a superimposed Justin Fields underneath that they just copied paste like a bad jersey edit. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, you know,
I don't know.
They already had these in the warehouse, and they were like, screw it, let's just put an 18 on it. No one will know the difference. And obviously, we can all see the difference, and it's not working.
This is an unbelievable mistake.
Really bad.
I don't know how you do that.
I mean, you do it when you're just trying to sort of like fudge it and hope nobody notices, which is not what I would normally associate with the Cost Company, a place that's a bastion of American freedom, great hot dogs and deals. But this is probably a little bit of a miss. And in the internet age, you just can't miss this much. Now, I would love to see Caleb Williams, who is, our first true Gen Z quarterback, incredibly online. If we get some sort of reference to this, if we can get a teammate either buying this or with this on their shirt, then I can die a happy man.
Wait, I have a question.
2 things.
Is Costco called the Cost Company? Is that?
I was just going to say the same thing, Jesse.
I've never heard that.
Me neither. All of a sudden, I'm hearing Cost Company. I'm like, wait, it's Costco. And then as Mike was talking, I'm like, oh, yeah, COSTCO, Cost Company.
But are you making that up,
because I was going to.
I'm not going to lie. I heard John Mayer say it once on his internet show, and it sounded believable enough to where I've run with it ever since as something in the lexicon.
Oh, so you don't know. You don't know.
Oh, no.
Because I was going to ask 2 questions. First, I was going to ask, do you think they put that display out knowing it was wrong, or just were completely oblivious to the mistake that they made, which I think they were. They were oblivious to it. And number 2, is it Cost Company?
No, it's not.
You said it twice.
It's not.
It's not.
No, that's just something that GoJo heard and has repeated ever since, but it is not correct.
Oh my.
And you know what? I don't see what's wrong with it, because you guys all know what I'm talking about. It makes some semblance of sense, and you guys are letting facts get in the way of a good story. Shame on you guys as I try and story tell this wonderful story as best I possibly. Yeah, you like the jujitsu there where I made this. You're fault. No, it's the children that are wrong. I am right.
Jesse, does it stand for something, or is it just Costco?
It's just Costco. It's just Costco. Yeah.
Mike with the Cost Company, because I could see how you would say it.
Yeah, I can see it too. That's why we kind of believed it.
It makes sense. John Mayer is believable enough to some people. Swifties, trust me, I'm still on our side here. But you know what? Take that one to the bank with you guys. Enjoy that later on. Jesse, let's get away from the Cost Company, Costco, whatever we choose to call it at this juncture, and instead talk about some of the changes, one of which we very obviously saw coming in the WNBA for the upcoming season.
Yeah, so for the 2025 season, we're going to have some changes to the playoff format. So the finals are going to be a best-of-7 series. They're going to have a 2-2-1-1-1 structure. So Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said this is going to give our fans a championship series format that they're accustomed to seeing in other sports, and the best-of-3 first round going to switch from that controversial 2-1 format to a 1-1-1 format, so each team that makes the playoffs hosts at least one game. That's the one we saw coming after the Caitlin Clark debacle.
I was going to say, they might as well call it the Caitlin Clark rule, Dad. That is a direct response to the Indiana Fever. This year's biggest selling, most ticket selling, best home crowds team in the WNBA not getting a chance to host a home playoff game.
That is obviously 99% of this rule. And one of the others is they're traveling better now. They're traveling private now.
Yeah.
So if you had long distance flights, to go 1-1-1 would be tougher. But when you're traveling private, it's a little easier to do. But there's no doubt this is the Caitlin Clark effect. And I love the fact they're going to a best-of-7 series for the finals. I think that was a smart move. And they're adding 4 games to the regular season. It was 40, and they're going to 44 regular season games. So all positive changes for a sport that has really been going in a positive direction.
100%. It's a level of growth that this league demonstrated it is more than ready for, between the expansion teams that are going to be coming up in the next couple of seasons, expanding that regular season, creating more inventory. That's what this is about right now. The WNBA is a space where growth is still possible in pro sports in a way that's rare right now. Most of these markets are really saturated. So I won't be surprised when more partners keep signing up to work with the WNBA, trying to buy into these organizations, because you see the trajectory the sport is on. And that's only going to keep getting better, right? As we're seeing now, Juju Watkins in college at USC signing a massive Nike deal this last week. The stars are going to continue to fill this pipeline. Yep. It's call and response. There's always been great players in this league, but we've talked about the freshman class from last year in college basketball and all these people seeing the W as even more of a financially viable pro option now. Maybe it leads to fewer players having to go play overseas eventually as well. And so all of this seems like great continued signs as we check the health of this league going forward. So, congratulations to the women of the W. They've worked their asses off to get to this point and to make this the product that it is today. And it's been a ton of fun to watch. And we got a great final series that's going to continue to celebrate that. Jesse, let's clear out space and get to the third. This is one I'm fascinated to pick Dad's brain on, because this does not seem like something catered to him, with the exception of one very important detail that we are going to absolutely blast into the sun.
So this is going viral on Twitter. It's like a fake matchup in football with some iconic characters, superheroes. You got the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to be honest, I don't know who a lot of these characters are. So I'm not sure where we stand on who's winning, because I can't identify them.
Mike, is that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man at center?
No, that's the Big Hero 6 character. So he looks very similar to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but he's much tougher.
Man? No.
It does, I thought. Listen, I think this is a cool idea, and obviously the quarterback being Superman is a number one. But the ridiculousness of this is Batman being the middle linebacker. Batman should be the water boy, okay? Batman should be the water boy. Batman is not a superhero in my eyes. He's not. He's a billionaire with a cool utility belt. He is going to get worked at middle linebacker.
Yeah.
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 I mean, the rest of these are gods, monsters, aliens, beings that have powers, the likes of which the universe has barely ever seen. And then you've got a guy in the middle in Batman, who, you're right, Dad, is a well-funded civilian who has prep time as the answer to any argument people want to put him in. And I get it's football. You have a week to prepare. In theory, it stacks up with Batman's skill sets better than most things would happen. But I saw someone already post the Pete Warner clip from the Ohio State-Alabama matchup of Devontae Smith running him ragged across the middle of the field, and that's exactly what it would look like. The only person more out of place is Anakin Skywalker as wide receiver, too. What business does he have out there?
Yeah.
He's going to get put into the dirt by GoJo or Vegeta at defensive back there. That's a mismatch and waiting to happen.
He has the Jedi mind tricks. He can Jedi mind trick everybody and be like, go chase the ball the other way. Go to the other side of the field. He's going to be by himself in the end zone.
He should be on the other sideline as a water boy, as Batman's on the other side. Mike, who is the D end over the Hulk? They have the Hulk at right tackle. I can't tell what that character is at D end over the Hulk.
It's from Star Wars, isn't it? That's one of the droids.
Yeah, it's one of the droids from Star Wars, Dad. To me, that's another placeholder. Like, decent run stuffing body. I'll tell you exactly how I'm going to work this one. I'm going to leave Broly on the other side over Venom. He's going to wreck shop there. And then I'm going to kick Thanos out like he's Chris Jones over the Hulk, who he boxed in the first Avengers movie in Endgame. absolutely folded him up, and we're going to collapse this pocket like it's going out of style. This is the kind of breakdown you come here for. Download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much, and have a great weekend.